while we're suffering on record levels, they're making record profit, which shows that we're being exploited.
Shows how criminal the Federal Reserve is.
Yeah. And I mean, this doesn't even take into account, I don't believe, the amount of personal wealth that's been made off of the market by their understanding of being, shapers of
and consolidating the power, all of the different businesses that have been bought up. And
the future profits they've ensured for themselves, and also the international players in the world, like currency speculators, and how they stand to benefit off of this as well. And these record profits actually were never this high except for 1914 when the Federal Reserve started. And their profits are being built on the securities which are being bought up on the dumped assets of all the bailouts and that kind of a thing. For instance, they're expecting to get 1.25 trillion of securities from Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. So what this appears to be, to me, from a basic understanding of a history that's not one spoon-fed to me by the tax-free foundations and the wealth shelters of the elites, is that this is a calculated shearing of the American public and a consolidation of wealth.
Yep.
And this a depreciation of the securities at any time would force the Fed to sell at a loss and could collapse the dollar. This is really just small fries on a grand scheme, and ultimately they want to have an international currency that would be a fiat currency as well, which is not based on anything in reality, that's tangible, is free to be manipulated, would probably come with debt and have interest, and it's just...
And then they could have the entire world tied up as one big giant, security deposit.
Yeah, well, then they can use fractional reserve banking, which basically makes money out of nothing by saying you only have to have 10% of what you really have.
Yeah, on Christmas Eve of 2009, this last Christmas Eve, the Treasury decided to lift the caps on how much bailout money Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae would be able to allow. So now all of us taxpayers are on the hook for an unlimited amount of money, which has already gone up to about $8 trillion that we're in liability to these companies that already have failed, that should have been allowed to fail. Now, what they say out of this article from the USA Watchdog is they say, my advice to you is to brace yourself for the impact of inflation. The actions of the Treasury and Wall Street have guaranteed it.
And then Timothy Geithner, the Treasury Secretary, actually was a Federal Reserve director in the New York Bank.
Yeah, the head of the Federal Reserve there in New York.
Yeah. And,
so that's more cronyism right there.
Yeah.
He was the head of the Federal Reserve during the Bush administration's time, and then under Obama, a completely different administration, gets to be chosen to be the head of our Treasury, which incidentally enough is where all of our tax money is sent. And he's a man who admittedly didn't pay taxes for years. It doesn't get more corrupt than that.
But he just doles it out to all of his banker buddies and stuff in the name of protecting and preserving our economy that's quite corrupt and should actually be allowed to fail, so that a more legitimate one can take its place that takes account for human life and the environment rather than payoffs for pollution and that kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Basically like the card market, and they're like Catholic Church indulgences. But yeah, back to Geithner here. He's been told to quit after emails reveal his involvement in the AIG cover-up. And this ultimately cost $13 billion to the taxpayers alone. So basically Geithner robbed taxpayers for $13 billion and just gave it out to AIG. So I'm not surprised that anybody's asking him to quit. He was grilled by Congress's House Oversight Committee, and we actually have a clip to share for you real quick that'll pretty much sum it up for you.
You've distanced yourself from any cover-up before November 24th, and then, of course, you were out of the picture from November 24th forward. Is that correct?
Congressman, I'm not trying to distance myself from anything. I will take complete responsibility for decisions I played a role in shaping, was part of shaping, including all decisions up to the 24th in this case. And I'm happy to take responsibility for all decisions I've made.
Then you were aware of 100 cents on a dollar bail.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And the risk that was posed by that offer. So you knew about that, but you weren't attempting to cover up. That's your testimony.
Of course not.
Today. Okay. So I believe either you made a bad decision there, or, in fact, there was the attempt to cover up one of the biggest bailouts, backdoor bailouts, in history. Now, you've tried to frame it as you did it because you did it in the interest of the people and the failure of the system. I'm telling you, I believe these are lame excuses. Either you were in charge and did the wrong thing, or you participated in the wrong thing. This, to me, it appears like, you know, when you were being confirmed, a lot of controversy surrounded your not paying your taxes. You gave lame excuses then. I believe you're giving the committee lame excuses now. And my final question is, why shouldn't we ask for your resignation as Secretary of the Treasury? I didn't think you should have been Secretary of the Treasury when it was disclosed that you didn't pay your taxes, because that's the highest financial responsibility position in the United States government. So why shouldn't you step down?
That is your right. That is your right to that opinion. I have worked in public service all my life. I have never been a politician. I have served my country as carefully and ably as I can, and it is a great privilege to me for me to work with this president to help repair the damage that was here when we took office.
Yes.
And I will do so as long as he asks me to do so, to the best of my ability, with great pride in this country and in him.
Yeah. Again, I think you're punting the blame, and I think you're trying to position yourself as the savior
you don't know me very well.
Institution. And yet,
you don't know me very well.
I will take. We're not getting the whole story. We're getting a lame story in a monumental backdoor decision of bailout, for which the American taxpayers will stay on the hook for huge amounts of money. Even by estimates of the Treasury Department, there will be billions of dollars from this deal, which either you should have been overseeing, and you said you had knowledge of, and you failed to take some steps to further protect the taxpayer interest. You were either incompetent on the job, or you were not doing your job and knew what was taking place and tried to conceal it. And I think that's grounds for your removal.
Congressman, I was there. I know what I was responsible for. I take full responsibility, and as I said, great pride in those judgments.
The gentleman's time has expired, but the Secretary may answer the question as he sees fit.
He takes great pride in those judgments.
I do. I take great pride in those judgments. And people have a right to disagree with them. And they have a right to go back and look at them with great care and analysis. And I hope you will give the same care and judgment to looking at those decisions in retrospect with the benefit of hindsight that we gave in making those decisions at that time.
And at the same time, we're supposed to trust this guy. He's telling us that during Federal Reserve Chairman Bernanke, if he was not reconfirmed as Federal Reserve Chairman, there would be very troubling consequences. Now, this is an instance of what we call economic terrorism. Yes. They're threatening the public, and they're threatening Congress. And, you know, all these people have their own interests of holding their position of power and that kind of thing. So Geithner's threatening us and telling us that we're going to go into like an economic collapse, which if you watch documentary like The Money Masters, which Access Humboldt broadcasts every now and then, they actually go in like a history of this, where the Federal Reserve was first started and even before then.
Where central banking came
Other central banks, yeah, they make these same threats, and they make good on them too. Yep. So I mean, they're definitely
they control your money supply. They control the money supply, and as long as they control that money supply, and as long as that's the case, you know, you try and fire one of their buddies, and they're going to collapse your economy on purpose. Mm-hmm. On purpose, they will do it. And that's why, you know, we need to get a handle on all of this situation with the Federal Reserve and with our fake currency. This information needs to go out. All of America needs to know about this so that these guys can be brought to justice. Yeah, because I mean, while all these people are like trying to analyze the economic situation and use all these silly equations, when there's people behind the scenes pulling strings and making all these other things happen, they're the real movers and shakers. There's no way that we're ever going to understand, get a grip, and have a legitimate system without taking into account people like Geithner and Bernanke and economic terrorism as a whole, and just control over our entire economic and monetary systems. But so the Fed is lowering rates now for an extended period. They're going to keep them low, and they said that this is going to strengthen the economy, and it continues to strengthen. Which, I mean, I really wouldn't take these guys' word for it. I mean, we're showing you pretty clearly here today that they can't be trusted, that they are in these positions of power because they're doing the bidding of other very influential and powerful people, which they have aligned themselves with.
which are counterintuitive to those of the American taxpayer and general free people.